we might have, oh, right, got it. Right, so we might have drawn this island before, but not from this angle. Now, the first thing you'll notice is those same mountains in the background. See how pale they are? That gives a distance. And then the island, which is slightly darker. Then the cliffs are slightly darker. And then the rocks, these are called skerries, where you get small islands in the sea. These are a lot darker because they're closer, but they're all on. If you draw 3 straight lines there, you have 3 straight lines quite close together. So that's what we're going to do. I'll just put the light on actually, because as always happens, the sun has now gone in. This should give a more even light. Okay. Sorry about the desk wobbling. That's always a problem. Try and stop it wobbling. Okay. So roughly in the middle here, I'm going to do just a straight line. You can actually use a ruler if you like. Now, I've drawn that quite pale. I better do that a bit stronger. Otherwise you won't be able to see it. And I'm going to do the main shape of the island, which is roughly this sort of shape. If you remember what I always say is don't worry about the lines showing or not showing. I'll just move that. You can always rub the lines out later. As you go over them. So that's the main shape of the island. And then we want the little mountains in the background here. I have to use a darker pencil. And then here, another little line of cliffs. And these can be, because again, you can make them your own shape. When you're drawing something from life, unless you actually have to draw it completely accurately, you are free to make it look, I mean, rocks, they look like rocks, so you don't have to be, but this line here, along the base here, is these showing that this line of rocks here is in the foreground. And then there's these 2 skerries, as they're called. So one of them is going to overlap the bottom there. And then a smaller one. Don't make them the same distances. The fact that that's a smaller one means that you've got this line of movement through the drawing, like that. And when we're doing the sea, so the first thing to do is to shade in the mountains in the background. And I'm going to use this because I'm right-handed. I shade that away. If you're left-handed, you usually shade the other way. But these are going to be fairly, there won't be any details in them. If you were looking from a distance, they would just look like dark blue lumps. looking like that. So they're looking fairly solid. Now we look at the island, it's got a bit of variety. It's not, it goes up to the end there, and then the little lighthouse. It is quite a small lighthouse, slightly sloping sides, and a little room on the side. It's also got a little roof, and just there are actually 2 windows and a door. I'm just going to fill this bit in here. Give a bit of variety. There is actually a ruined abbey here, and that belongs to St. Dunwin. This island is called Llandwyn, and St. Dunwin is the Welsh, so-called Welsh St. Valentine, which, as he is never got married, I don't quite know. Anyway, so there is a little abbey here. It's more or less just a ruin. It's like a door and a bit of like that. And then one of the best things about the island, there are actually 2 crosses, and it's about, the cross itself is about 2/3 the height of the lighthouse. It's quite prominent. Now, if you look at the sides of the island here, the cliffs, you see the shading downwards. So the end has these cliffs generally often have, again, you just want to do those sorts of shapes. They represent clefts in the rock. And you notice this is darker than the mountains behind. And also they can be, I'm going to overlap. So the darker ones at the bottom. The bottom of cliffs where they go into the sea are virtually always dark because they have a black lichen grows on them. And when the tide is out, you'll see the black line, but below that, you will see a paler line where the barnacles are. So this cliff goes up there. Again, I'm doing the lines to try and suggest the shape. You can vary them. I'll say they're going to be darker. And this is a calm day, so there are hardly any waves. We do get calm days. We've not had any for the past few weeks, but again. So the top of the island is grass and heather. So you could just suggest that you don't need to fill it all in. See if there's a I forgot there was a light on this camera. That's better. Sorry, it was too dark before. I can't see. I've got my screen set differently. Right, now if we look at the lines of rocks here, these can be quite jagged and quite dark. But before we do those, you'll notice there are some clouds. Now they're coming in from the sea. This is the direction of the light, as usual. It's also west. So that's where we get the sunsets and the clouds. The clouds come in like this and they go up when they hit the land. In fact, a lot of clouds form, as I'm sure you can tell me with your home heading. A lot of clouds form when they meet the mountains. So these mountains down here. I shouldn't put that as part of the. Rub those out. Yeah, so the clouds are darker underneath. We're not going to go into great cloud shapes, but all the time we're suggesting movement this way. So when it rains, as it does here quite a lot, and it dumps the rains in like dark curtains. Now the horizon is about here. So you can have clouds coming in off the sea. The nice thing about clouds is, like rocks, clouds can be virtually any way you like them. Got a bit out of hand that. Just remove that. Anyway. All right. So I'm now going to do the base of the rocks here, quite dark and jagged. And all these little clefts and cracks. In fact, they often vary them. Some are small, but they're literally just depending on what sort of rock they are as well. These rocks are supposedly over 600 million years old. But the problem is, if you test them for something called radiocarbon-14, you'll find they're only thousands of years old. And then in them, you will find pollen. Now, pollen wasn't supposed to have evolved until about 100 million years ago. But here we have pollen in rocks, which are supposedly 3.5 billion years old. None of it makes any sense. Because when we look at the rocks at the end of the estuary here, they are ice age. They're ice age boulder clay. And they sit directly on these, which are supposedly 3.5 billion years old. So it's just a question of a few imaginary billion years missing. Anyway, I love rocks. They tell us an awful lot about creation and the fall and everything else. So there we are. And so I'm not going to do anything with the sea, because it's, as the sky is mainly, I mean, this paper is actually white, but it's impossible to show white paper on a camera, on a screen. Nothing looks white at all. It always looks cream, or you see that pinky color, that's a reflection of my face and hands. It's in the middle of this paper. So we won't put anything on that except one little Z like that. Two little Zs. And a turn, beautiful turn, flown all the way 76,000 kilometers. That bird can fly, but not that particular one. Anyway, so we'll put this reflection in the water. And that helps to show you where the bird is in the landscape. So you've got the reflection of the lighthouse would be here. This reflection is here. So it shows you that the bird is small and close. Right. Okay, well. Are you ready to do number 2? The second one, so without the colors. Everyone okay with that? Right.
Yes.
Oh, good. Remember, you can always, don't hurry these things. You can always finish them off later on. Don't hurry them. Right. Now. I'm going to use some. This is a creamy colored paper. It doesn't actually matter what color we do this. If you want to paint it later, then you can paint this blue, and you can paint the trees green and the rocks silvery color. So you see, it's very similar. We're doing the same thing that we did before, taking a line of mountains and then an horizon. And then this is a headland. This is actually in the Lake District. I've forgotten the name of the place. So this is a headland rather than an island, and these are very, very pale rocks. So what we want to do is balance the lights and the darks. Don't worry about this. This was a bit of printing, a bit of mess from printing. So once again, let's have a look at, I'll do a, I'm just drawing a rough rectangle. It's a slightly distorted rectangle. Just imagine that this is straighter down here. You don't have to do a rectangle around yours. This is just to try and get me to, I should be looking at the screen as well as looking at the drawing. Okay. Now this is roughly, we're going to do this horizon line here. Put the horizon line in first. So that will be just, it is about halfway. And now the line of hills, if you look at, you see the shadows are quite strong on these because the hills are covered in snow. And we've basically got two peaks. So we want one about here. And then a smaller one. Down there. And it's got a bit of a bump on the top there as well. That goes down behind the trees because the trees are coming along here. And if we look at the trees, you see they're roughly in an oval shape. So we'll do an oval shape like that. So all these could be rubbed out later or drawn over or painted over. The trees are in that roughly in that, and then we've got another wedge. We've got a wedge of rocks on this headland and a bit of a beach. So we want roughly now this is going to slant down here towards us a little. This is not a straight horizon line. And there's another group of trees here, which looks like a bear. So it's going to do the point about them is that they come down onto their own bit of shore here, which that will be stronger than that, and that will be stronger than that. So that's the basics of it. If you look at the trees, you will see there are about 7 trees, and the top is like that. And the trees don't have to be equidistant. We want this main one here to be up here, and a slightly smaller one, another one, 2 here. In fact, we've actually only got 6 on there because this oval, I've made this oval. We'll trim a bit of that oval off. I made the oval too big. So the first thing to do is to look at the shade down the side of the mountain. Like that, and do that. And likewise, in fact, a lot of mountains, of course, have all sorts of little bits of shade on them. They're not just white and bluey color like this. Oh. You need to put a bit of, so these are going to be quite pale. If they were painting this would be a pale purpley blue. Now, at the moment, I'm going to leave the sky, and you can do that later if you want to, depending on what sort of material you're using, whether you want to paint it or draw it. I'll leave the sky for the minute and concentrate on the trees. Now, you might remember when we drew trees a month or so ago, we did quite a few of these. These are basically Scots pine. They're very tall, elegant trees, and most of their foliage tends to be at the top with smaller bits below. So you get quite a lot of light through them. You can see the background behind them. So I say, I just remember that this mountain goes up behind there. So if we start with the tallest one, we've got this little clump of foliage at the top. That's often where you'll find an osprey's nest, by the way. Ospreys love to nest on the tops of these because they're kind of flat. And then again, I'm not going to copy these trees exactly. And then a bigger bit here, and then a more slender bit, because every one is unique. And then a lot of their branches bend outwards because they've got these quite heavy bits on them, and some down at the bottom. And we'll also put the trunk in. The trunk of Scots pines are quite slender. Now, just to make it clearer, I shall rub out the edge of the oval. You see the sea, well, the lake behind these rocks. And you'll also notice on here, we've got shading down here and across. And that's roughly fades out. So we do this very pale here, getting darker. I mean, this could be woodland or mountainside. We're just representing it as shading. I mean, there could be a village down here or a road. And also, now we'll do a few more. A lot of the tops look like mushrooms as well. Scots pine. There's also the Corsican pine, which is a bit similar. So we're just doing different, we're adding variety, all sorts of different shapes. Fill the trunks in. Lots of variety. And there's the shading. On the hillside behind. Now this one, those two are quite again, variety. You can put as much. When you're doing things like this, it's nice to let things show through from the background. So now, so you see that they're only vaguely like these. Now the nicest bit is putting the heavy shading in. To make them stand out. Also shows the mountain behind. And it doesn't matter if these things do get a bit mixed up, as it were. Because you don't look out at a landscape and you see every tree isn't clear from another one, is it? They can all be blended together. The trees can bend into the background, the hills. It's nice to leave the white shapes between them. Just trying to straighten this up a bit. That's better. Yeah, a lot of them do bend. As much variety as possible. Yep. It's a bit cockeyed, but it's a put another another trunk on that one. They sometimes do have two trunks. Now, below this, we've got this rocky headland, a very pale rock. Again, it's going to have, it has the shadows. And same sorts of clefts. Again, lots of these clefts have green mosses growing in them. Because this is a mainly grass here, do that fairly pale. Once again, remember we've got the light coming in this way on the right hand side. So put the strongest shadows on this side. Some of the clefts are quite narrow, so there's not much of a shadow. Looking at the tree here, really simplify that. But we don't want to do it all dark because this is the shadow underneath here. Do that with lighter strokes. And the shadow comes down onto this bit of beach. This bit of beach here. And slightly differently to the one with the sea, we're going to have a reflection here. So I'm just going to do horizontal lines, soft horizontal lines. Because what they get darker as they go towards the bottom of the rocks. What they do is they suggest that the rocks are actually in the water rather than floating above it. We haven't got one on here, but we're going to have a little special little rock there. And then just getting fainter, the lines getting fainter. That's, you can see there's also, we've got some darker trees on the horizon there. But I'll just suggest that a bit. So it's not a completely straight line. As you probably know, there are hardly any straight lines in nature, in creation. So that gives the horizon a bit of a mistiness. So I'll do a bit more there, just to make that stronger. A little bit more there, so it leans over more.